The early models of expectation were cognitive models, and the idea was that the rat makes a little model of the world, and then he operates in that world according to what he expects. Now there's a problem with that model. There's a bunch of them. The first is, now we know that animals don't make comprehensive models of the world. And that's a huge problem. The problem is, well, what do they get rid of and how? But the way you get rid of that problem is that you introduce motivation into the equation. And it's interesting because the behaviorists always thought of animals as blank slates, and so they never really took motivation seriously as a contributor to cognitive modeling. And it's also the case that probably ever since the Enlightenment, people have thought about emotion and motivation as forces opposed to rationality. So you were rational insofar as you didn't let your emotions and your motivations influence you. But that's a foolish theory. There are times when it's inappropriate for certain purposes to let certain motivations interfere with your observations. But generally speaking, you never think about anything without being motivated. Because why would you? Like, there's a trillion things you could think of, and you're not going to think of most of them. You have to have a reason to think of them. And the reason is that, well, all the time you're operating in some sort of motivational structure. And you can sort of model them using the same kind of hierarchy that we used to model the personality as such. So, I'll give you an example. So let's think of some basic motivations and emotions. Those aren't good categories, by the way, because there's no such thing as motivations and there's no such thing as emotions. The things we loosely categorize into motivations and emotions each have their own brain circuitry. And so there are similarities between them and there are differences. They're not clean categories. But we're going to use the terminology anyways because we don't have a better one. For my purposes, you can roughly define a motivation as opposed to emotion as a motivation is really something that establishes, you could say, a goal, but it doesn't. It establishes one of these. It doesn't establish a goal, and it doesn't drive behavior. So what it does, let's say you're hungry and it's nighttime, you want to have a peanut butter sandwich. So you imagine you're sitting there typing away, and all of a sudden, this little image of having something to eat creeps into your head. It's usually quite specific. It's that there's something that you would like to eat. So you think, well, I could really use some popcorn, let's say. So you're typing away and the stupid popcorn thing keeps popping up, and finally, your whole body's starting to get into the popcorn, and you think, oh, to hell with it, I'll go make some popcorn. And so what's happened is that your hypothalamus, roughly speaking, is monitoring your internal body state, and it thinks that maybe you need some salt, but maybe you need some food. And so it's going to start popping up. Not a drive. It's not like all of a sudden you're a robot, like a popcorn-seeking robot, and you're laying out your chained together, conditioned popcorn making and eating routines. That isn't what happens. What happens instead is that you start to envision a new state of being. And that state of being has a goal, which is you eating some popcorn. And it has you where you are, which is in an insufficient state of popcorn. And then what's happening as well is that the motor processes that you would use to implement that are also disinhibited. They're there. You already know how to do it. They get disinhibited. Or you could think of them as getting primed. They're not. They're getting disinhibited. But you can think of it as being primed. And at some point, that becomes overwhelming enough, say pressure from the hypothalamus, which is really what's bloody well in control, says, yeah, enough, like internet surfing, off to the popcorn. And so you leap up, and then what do? You reorient the way you're looking at the world. Everything in the world becomes low resolution, or even zero, except those few things that are relevant to your new quest. Down the stairs you go, you find the right pan, you find the popcorn, getting irritated if you can't find it, right? Because now, you see, it's interesting because your emotions align along your goals. As long as you're pursuing a beeline to your goal, and everything's laying itself out, not as you expect, but as you want, then your emotions stay positive. But as soon as something deviates, then you're irritated. And the reason for that is that, like, let's say you can't find the popcorn pan. Well, your brain is computing, well, something like this. This is obviously not how it works, but it's an X amount of energy and matter from popcorn means it has X value. If you expend a whole bunch of energy running around, in your clueless state, trying to acquire popcorn, you can easily get to the point where you've expended more energy and time than the popcorn delivers. And if you do that for a month, then you die. So it's perfectly reasonable for you to get irritated when the path length to your destination increases radically. And you might get even more irritated if you can't find any popcorn. And then it's like, oh no, I have to dispense with the popcorn micro-personality, and it's all irritated because, you know, it's sort of alive. It's irritated that you have to squash it. And then you have to come up with, well, maybe I could have a peanut butter sandwich. You know, and pop, up comes a new little micro-personality that orients itself towards the goal. And so all the time you're doing that. You're always in a motivated state. Now, it's not a drive, because it's not deterministic, but it does have a behavioral element. You have all these Piagetian subroutines that are stored in your body, you know, all your body capacity, all your skills, and you know which set of those you're likely to use if you're going to do X thing, and so those get prepared. And then your perceptions reorient towards the new goal. It's like a hunting goal. You're fixated on it. And then your emotions orient along that. So as long as things are going well, you're happy, you're hopeful, things are proceeding, that's positive emotion, that's dopaminergically mediated. And if things aren't going well, then it's either, well, it's any amount of negative emotion from mild irritation to like full-blown temper tantrum. So that's, and you're, okay, now that's the simple story. The complex story is, okay, you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're tired, you're hot, you're cold, you're lonely, you need to play. Okay, so let's say you've got, for the sake of argument, let's say you have 8 fundamental motivational systems. Now, who cares how many? It's a finite set. It's under 20. Depends on whether you include anger. Is anger motivation or emotion? Is pain motivation or emotion? We don't care, because they're not formal categories. So, anyways, there's a set number of them. And then, so they have to run to satiation. And so what satiation means is they set up an end state, you perform the routines, you achieve the end state, the system shuts down. It's satiated. Now you'll experience that as satisfaction, not as pleasure. Now you think, well, what's the difference? It's tight. It's complicated. But it's important. The kind of positive emotion that people really like is associated with the search and the hope, not with the acquiring. Because what happens when you acquire is, well, you're no longer in this state, which, you know, has an impulse to action in it, but that's exciting, that's fun, you know, you're on the track of something. It's like you're alive while you're searching for something. Well, then you find it. It's like, good, you need to find it. But then the whole thing disappears and you're sitting there thinking, well, I've just graduated. Now what? Right? Because that's what will happen when you graduate. It's like, hey, you're a student. You've got status. You've got a hierarchy of values. You've got a way of orienting yourself in the world, and you have an identity. It's like, so you're in there, and everybody's happy about it. So then one day you graduate. It's like success. It's, well, really? It's like poof, that's gone. And the next thing you know, you're like handing out coffee at the local Starbucks. Yeah. So well, you know, you get the point. You've experienced this all the time in your life. You hit a pinnacle. You've attained something, but the problem is that now what? You have to conjure up a whole new you. So some of it is satisfying, you've accomplished the goal, but some of it's just a big pain in the neck. It's like, uh-oh, student me has disappeared, and now it's frantically searching for employment me. And that me doesn't have the status, and it is in a space of much more radical uncertainty. So don't be thinking that getting to where you want to go is what you want. What you want is to bloody well make sure that the voyage is worth it. Now, and it's very interesting because people are really wired up this way. And I think it's because we're so radically exploratory. So when you're proceeding towards a valued goal, let's call that a cue that goal attainment is about to occur. It's going to occur in some chain. A leads to B, B leads to C, C leads to D, and so on. You're like a hound on a trail. It's positive. It's like, yeah, this is working. Yeah, this is working. Yeah, this is working. That's positive. It's moving you ahead. And that's really where you experience a lot of your positive emotion. That's dopaminergically mediated. That's the system you'll kick with cocaine or any of the other drugs of abuse that people use that don't quell anxiety. It's a very, very desirable motivational state. I read a while back somebody who said, you can buy anything, but you can't buy wanting anything. And that's a staggeringly interesting comment, because you think, well, you know, is wanting a positive state? Well, you don't have it, so that's kind of annoying. And you think, well, no, I don't want to want things, I want to have them. It's like, yeah, don't be so sure about that. So one of the ways people have figured out how to deal with that is that they decide to want something that they can't get. And that's actually extraordinarily smart, and it's a deep archetypal idea. So aim high. That's what he says. Aim high. And he thinks, well, it's not very likely, but I might as well aim high. That's a very good piece of advice. You want to aim so high you can't attain it. Because then you've got something worth, you might think, that's such a perverse piece of advice. It's, why would you chase something you can't have? Well, the answer might be, because the chasing is worth it. And then you might think, well, what's worth it? Well, I can give you a hint about that too. It's like, develop your character. Because what you've got is what you carry with you wherever you go. And it's way better to be able to do things than to be rich. Because if you're rich, well, then that disappears. Poof, you're poor. But if you can do things, short of being demolished, and even then, people are unbelievable at overcoming those things. It's like, you're on the way.